Hello everyone, sorry for not being around much these days. I've been getting ready for craft show, so I have a lot to do, making prints and originals for sale. So I promise once I'm done in a couple weeks or a bit less, I will have more videos out. So in the meantime, this is the video for the June Scrawlrbox. The unboxing was a great surprise for me because I've always wanted to try the Chameleon markers, but never really knew if I was going to use them or not because I don't work with markers very often. So I'm really glad that we get them and that I was able to try them. For those of you who haven't heard of the Chameleon markers yet, it's a double-ended marker with a brush side and a small bullet nib on the other side, and it also comes with a mixing chamber. So it's another detachable piece that has a colorless blender. Now you can't really use the colorless blender per se, just as a regular marker, that is. The way you use it is you take the colored marker and you use either side of it, either the bullet nib or the brush nib, and you put it in contact with the colorless blender. In other words, you attach the nib to the mixing chamber where the colorless blender is, and you hold the marker vertically, and the alcohol from the blender will transfer onto the colored nib and will kind of remove some of the ink. Then when you apply the marker onto a paper, first there won't be anything, and then gradually the color will come back and you're going to end up with a beautiful gradient. So I think that really the idea behind these markers is to avoid having a huge variety of markers. Like if you use Copic markers, for instance, you will tend to buy a lot of them in the same color family that are slightly darker or slightly lighter, just so you could make good blends, smooth blends. Now with the Chameleon marker and the colorless blenders attached, you don't need all those markers because you can get a nice gradient with just the colorless blender and the color that you want to use. The Chameleon markers have a brand new addition. They're called color tops. So they're just like the mixing chambers, except that instead of having a colorless blender in it, there's a color. So you can make really nice blends between colors that aren't even close, like for instance a pink and a brown, and you'll end up, for instance, with a nice pink turning slowly into a brown with a very nice gradient. I think those are a great addition, although you probably could get the same effect by using two different markers and touching tips together. So for the June Scrawlrbox, the theme this month is Maximum Carnage. So I was trying to figure out what to do for this theme, and it turns out that I finished watching a series that I used to watch when I was a kid called Candy Candy. And one of the characters ends up going to war during the First World War, and it gets killed. So I ended up drawing him during his last fight, and I thought that, yeah, World War I or any wars, really, they were just a huge carnage. So this is what I did for my challenge this month. So there was a triple challenge for me because first, I don't draw manga very often. Still practicing with them. I rarely use markers, although I really enjoy using them when I do. And I really had to get used to the Chameleon pens. Now I forgot to mention that the box also came with a detail pen, which is, it looks just like a Chameleon pen. It has two tips on both ends, and they're basically fine liners. One is smaller than the other one. I thought that it was a bit bulky because it's the same diameter as one of the markers, and so when you're using a fine liner to create details, I think, to me at least, I think I'm more comfortable using something thinner, with a thinner barrel. Also, the tips work best if you use the marker vertically rather than slightly slanted. So sometimes I try I was drawing at some angles and it really didn't work very well. I had to move the fine liner and hold it vertically. It worked better that way. But I was not very impressed. The only good thing about it is it's compatible with alcohol inks, and so it won't smudge with them. On to the Chameleon markers. So as much as I think the idea is really cool, they work very well, I didn't find them very easy to use, at least for creating a drawing. I know I need to get used to them and practice some more, but I found them very time consuming. And I don't think they're very practical. I ended up with a bunch of tops here and there and bits and pieces of markers taken apart, and took me a while to find which piece belonged to which. It really takes a while. And then putting the tips in the mixing chambers and waiting, and then applying them on paper and then doing it again because it already ran out or already got too dark. It does take a while. So I found it very awkward to create something with it. In my opinion, these are wonderful for coloring books because you're coloring areas that are small, and so the mixing chamber will work, or at least the mix on the tip will work well enough for smaller areas on paper. You won't run out of the color you want as fast. But when you're using larger areas, they're really a pain, and you'll see in a little while when I'm coloring the sky, I had a hard time getting the effect I wanted to. So in the end, it's not as smooth as I wanted it to be. That said, these markers blend very well, so that was fun. And they're good markers. The colors were beautiful. I like the mix that we received in the box. I think they go very well together. I'm not very fond of the small bullet nib. I think it's a bit streaky. But I really enjoyed the brush nib, although it seems to be fraying after a while. But I don't know. Probably I need to get used to them. And you need to make sure you always have a piece of scrap paper next to you so that you can make sure that the mix of colors you want is what's on the tip that you're just about to use. So I hope this all makes sense. I was very happy again that I got to try these markers. They are fun. I struggle with them a lot. Maybe with more practice I would be able to make bigger pieces without the struggle I had. But all in all, they're fun. I do think though that they were made originally for coloring books, and I'm sure they work very well for coloring books. Also, I'm not sure if you noticed, but I have a brand new microphone. So let me know what you think about the new sound. Is it better? Is it worse than before? I might need to do check out the settings and see how I can improve. So that's it for today, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.